What are some of your favorite examples of success stories when it comes to people, maybe unlikely heroes of the story that gain trust?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you, I don't think I've ever shared this on a podcast or interview before, but
We love it.
this comes to mind. This may be a little far stretched, but bear with me. Abraham Lincoln, early in
Mm,
the Civil War, the North was kind of losing at the beginning. And France, in particular, was angling, which side to support. They were open to both sides, North or South. There were good economic arguments. So anyway, one day they learned that the French were sending a delegation of their top two or three military leaders to Washington to meet with Lincoln to determine whether the military force of the North was sufficient. So it was a very important meeting. And Lincoln's military advisors said, "Well, we got to brief you. You got to get educated on this stuff." And Lincoln said, "Don't worry about it. We'll deal with it when it comes up." Ugh. So the military leaders come and they said, we've been looking at your battlefield statistics. And if you look at the number of casualties in each battle, and then you look at the roster the day after, there's a gap. And that gap has to be desertions. If you subtract the casualties, it's still not enough. People are leaving, which means you have no discipline, which means you have no morale, which means ultimately you have no political support. What do you say to that? And Lincoln's leaders back in the room are like quaking in their boots. Oh my God, how's he going to answer that? He doesn't know anything about military. And Lincoln says, "Well, that reminds me of a story." And they're all thinking, "Oh my God, not a story." And Lincoln says to the generals, he says, "Say there's two birds on a tree up there, and you take a gun and you shoot one bird. How many are left?" And the general said, "One." He said, "Actually, no. That bird gets scared and flies away, so there's none." He says, something like that happens in the battlefield too. There's all this blood and gore, and the battles often happen at night, people dying, and, horrible hell on earth. And sure enough, you look in the next morning, they're out wandering around. But if you look at the day after, you'll find we're back to full strength. And that's a testament to our will and our commitment and our morale. So actually, we got more power than you think. And the French general said, "Oh my God, this guy's never been to war, and he's talking about mud and blood, and this guy, and he knows the stats. Oh my goodness!" And of course, the French then came in on the side of the North. Now, I think what he did there, he posed like, "Oh shucks, I'm just an old country lawyer type," and he wasn't. He was pretty smart. But he also brought them in through that story, as we talked about, and made it informal, made a connection with them in ways that they could, they weren't offended by him saying, "No, there's only one bird left." They get it. I don't know. There's probably some other lessons in that too, but it always struck me as a gem of a story about how to hold an audience's connection with a seemingly weird metaphor that's actually right on spot.